There was once a girl who was the heroine of her own story. She was bestowed with a single wish, but if she used it, her story would end shortly after. In one story, the girl wished for everyone to be happy, but all it did was destroy individuality itself, because she couldn't define happiness. In another, the girl wanted the world to end, but all she did was destroy a fraction of the world, because she couldn't grasp how big it was. You too can have your wish granted, for you too are the heroine of your own story. We have finally done it. We're at the last entry of the mainline Hello Charlotte games. For those of you who do not know, Hello Charlotte is a 3-part episodic RPG Maker game made by the Estonian developer ㄲㄲㅃㅅ. The main protagonist of these games is a girl named Charlotte Wiltshire, who inhabits a strange world. Back in 2020, I got sick with COVID while I was training for a new job. While I was stuck at home, I discovered these games on a weird femcel forum as I was doing an internet deep dive. Since then, the story of these games has stuck with me, prying at the back of my mind to cover them like some sort of parasite. As you can see by the runtime, this game is dense. Unlike the second video, there won't be a recap of any previous events, as that would take too long. If you know the series, you know that episode 3 is a very confusing game. To tie parallels to the previous entries, you need to experience each of them. I highly recommend watching my previous 2 videos on the series. They'll get you caught up to speed with the story, the characters of the world itself, etc, etc. However, going into the third game, you're still not going to understand a lot, because there is a pretty massive subversion of expectations that happens right away. That being said, I will set the stage for you. This game is split into 2 parts. Episode 0, which acts as a prologue, and Episode 3 itself. In Episode 0, we play as Charlotte Wiltshire. Like the previous entries, she lives in the house, a multi-floor structure, and goes to school. She lives with a strange cast of characters. Some are scientists, others are workers, and then there is a tailor who was once Krampus. It's a long story. Charlotte knows you inhabit her world as you play. You are a puppeteer controlling her. In Episode 3, let's dive right into Episode 0. In a dream sequence, we get some of Charlotte's oldest memories. She was suddenly brought into the world and was told by a voice who she inherently knew as her mother to be good. Strangely, after this voice spoke to her, she knew exactly what to do next. Though this sparked her curiosity. What was her purpose? Why did she know all of these people she never met? Once again, Mother's voice rang out, telling her to be good once more. But another voice called out to her. You don't have to be. Charlotte immediately knew this voice was the god of this world. Charlotte wakes up. Everything in her room is pure white. The flavor text of the environment reveals pamphlets for something called the White Society. In the TV room, a lone TV is playing a commercial for a drug called Link. Its purpose is to connect 2 people's minds together. This is at the cost of some horrific side effects, as displayed by the commercial. Visiting Aiden, the tailor, we find that instead of his usual business of making dresses from traditional fabric, he is instead making them from the skin and remnants of Charlotte's previous dead bodies. Aiden himself is non-responsive, taking on the appearance of a monster. Heading into the basement, we find Dr. Huxley in his lab. He impatiently tells us to go away and make ourselves useful, giving us some gummy ears. Charlotte antagonizes him, asking why he never looks at the faces of the corpses he performs his operations on, but Huxley ignores her. Next to Huxley's lab, we find Felix. Upon Charlotte greeting him, he nervously greets her back, giving her a happy bottle which she requested from him. To reward Felix, we can choose for Charlotte to either flick him in the head or pet him. Either way, he's not very accepting of the gesture. From behind, Bennett smacks our head and asks what we're doing. Charlotte says she was just picking up a secret cookie ingredient that she requested from Felix. Bennett wants to know more, but Charlotte won't tell. With this done, we can head to school. Giving the gummy ears to the elevator, we head to the 2nd floor. The outside world has a childlike presentation. On the way, we find some bullies beating a kid near an alleyway. Charlotte stops to observe the situation. She then takes out a camera, takes a photo of the event, and heads to school, as happy as ever. At school, we find that some of the students in the hall are normal, whereas some are completely white and mimic whatever Charlotte says. On the second floor of the school, we find Henri. She's been waiting for Charlotte and even brought her some lunch. Charlotte is dismissive of this, asking if Henri wants to join her up on the roof for lunch with her friends. Henri is disappointed that her friends will be there, but goes along with it anyway. At the end of the floor, we see a student suffering from a link overdose. On the wall behind him is a sign warning about the white flu. Symptoms include losing your color, not responding to stimuli, and not being able to read this sign. Each of these white students have come down with the flu, acting as mindless husks. Heading to the rooftop, we meet with girl A, B, and C for lunch. Girl B, notably, is the only one who is not completely white and seems to be nervous. The other girls harass Henri for only bringing Charlotte lunch before they hear a door open nearby. A girl with red hair, Scarlett Eyler, appears. She asks what the group is doing, skipping classes on the rooftop. The group bites back, calling her a killjoy and mocking her position as the class rep. After Scarlett threatens to call the teachers, Charlotte decides it's not worth the hassle and has everyone leave. Before leaving, Scarlett looks to Henri, asking if she really should be associating with Charlotte. Henri dismisses this, saying that Charlotte and the other girls are her friends. Scarlett relents and leaves. The girls harass Henri for being the teacher's pet, with girl B clearly just going along with it out of fear. Charlotte thinks back to when she met Henri. Henri got her skirt stolen by the very girl she had just been sitting with, and was forced to wear gym shorts for the rest of the day. Seeing how helpless she was, Charlotte felt nothing. Charlotte leaves the group, forgoing class for club activities. Entering back into the school, an odd boy tries to get Charlotte's attention. Charlotte dismisses this and keeps walking, but the boy continues to pester her. Charlotte asks if she knows him. He responds by saying, "Nothing in this world can define me, but you can refer to me as C." Charlotte then recognizes him as Charles. She points out that he got a new vessel from outside. It's the boy that was being beaten in the alleyway. He had been avoidant of the school grounds up until this point, but now he can blend in and interact with Charlotte at school. Charlotte cuts the conversation short, saying she needs to get to her meeting at the White Society. At the meeting, Charlotte stands on a white stage with white curtains and white walls. All the students with the white flu stand below her. Charlotte praises everyone for their hard work in finding names to be added to the blacklist for the week, which involves finding the tainted, submitting their information to the group's website, and voting. Those with the most votes get punished. Charlotte asks the audience to vote for the special guest of this meeting's execution hour. After a brief countdown, the votes are in and Charlotte gets ready to put on the show. Charlotte has strapped girl B, who now has a face, to a chair and stuffed a cloth in her mouth. Charlotte greets us and points out that we have no emotional attachment to this character, nor any knowledge of her doing anything wrong to warrant her execution. But nobody cares to check the facts. She was chosen to be the victim, so now they're gonna bake cookies together. Girl B lets out a muffled scream. Charlotte makes girl B mix the ingredients. Girl B starts crying again, but Charlotte reassures her. Charlotte notes that despite girl B's meek nature, she actually supports offensive behavior, showing the audience a drawing that she supposedly made of two crudely drawn individuals, one punching the other and the other crying. Charlotte asks who in their right mind would make something like this, stating that this is why they need to be punished. Quick quiz, what is the special ingredient that Charlotte is going to add into these cookies? If you guessed Clorox, you were correct. Charlotte adds the Clorox and gets ready to have girl B taste the dough. Taking her gag off, girl B screams at Charlotte to let her go. Charlotte reminds girl B to mind her language, as this is a PG-rated program. Since girl B can't really move her arms, Charlotte helps her taste the cookie dough by dumping the entire mixture directly down her throat. Girl B screams and gurgles in agony. Charlotte then says we need to preheat the oven to 180 degrees Celsius, but since they don't have an oven, they'll have to use girl B's body instead. Charlotte takes out a flamethrower and incinerates Girl B. Charlotte heads home. Too tired to interact with any of the other tenants, she heads straight for bed. We get another dream sequence with the god of this world. They tell a story about a girl who was bestowed with a single wish, but it had a consequence. If the girl used it, she would die shortly afterwards. The girl wished for everyone to be happy, but the wish destroyed individuality itself because she couldn't define the meaning of happiness. In another timeline, the girl wished for the world to end, but only a small fraction of the world got destroyed, as she couldn't grasp how big it was. Charlotte wakes up, once again wandering around the house before heading off to school. Checking in on Aiden, we find that he's normal again. He's been making new headpieces and asks us to try one on. It's Charlotte's scalp sewn into a hat. In the basement, Bennett brushes by us, saying that he can't talk since his favorite show is on in an hour, and he still has work to do. Charlotte makes a note to stop by the TV room after this interaction. Huxley's lab is dealing with a gas leak. Upon talking to who we think is Huxley, we find out that it's actually a robot version of himself whose purpose is to talk to Charlotte. Charlotte finds that Huxley is agreeing with everything she says after a while, so she asks for him to kill one of his assistants. Without hesitation, the robot leaps and decapitates a nearby worker, revealing them to also be androids. Felix's lab is empty, aside from a lone computer terminal. Charlotte looks at it, finding a plethora of valuable research. We can choose to either delete it or leave it be. In my opinion, this version of Charlotte is meant to be as mean as possible, so of course I deleted it. Felix comes out, asking what we're doing with his computer. He quickly realizes what we've done, becoming furious. Charlotte says that it was all pointless anyway, and that she just did it for an achievement badge. Back upstairs, we visit the TV room. Charlotte gets the urge to break something, and again we have the choice if we want to break the TVs or not. Interestingly, these moments of choice don't actually change the outcome of any of the events of the game. Aside from different interactions with characters, there's really no benefit or drawback. At school, Henri greets Charlotte, wanting to head to class together. Charlotte says that she's skipping, and that Henri should too, or there will be consequences. Henri agrees, and Charlotte says that while she's at it, Henri should buy her something to eat since it's boring to hang out with her. On the second floor, Scarlett interrupts us, saying she's keeping an eye on Charlotte. Scarlett probes for information on what Charlotte does in her white society meetings, but Charlotte says that she hasn't broken a single rule, and that Scarlett needs to mind her own business. In the cafeteria, Charlotte excitedly asks for Henri to buy her the only chips inside the vending machine. After buying it, Charlotte says that she doesn't like the flavor. Eventually, the bell rings and we are greeted by girls A and C. They petition to hang out at Henri's. Henri doesn't have much of a choice, so she obliges. At her place, they go to her room. It's essentially a storage closet. Girl A and C ridicule Henri for her living situation. Charlotte says that they should get some drinks. The girls look at Henri, and Henri runs off to grab some lemonade. Exploring the house, we come to a door that's unlocked. Henri notices, and the girls mention that Henri said she had a brother, and that they're just gonna go say hi. Henri begs them not to go in, but they do anyway. The girls, minus Charlotte, are horrified, demanding an answer from Henri. Henri explains that her parents never let her see her brother, but one day she checked in on him and found him like this. The girls ask if he was alive the last time she saw him, with Henri all but confirming that she killed him out of self-defense. The girls ridicule her for this, and Henri breaks down crying, locking herself in the bathroom. Everyone but Charlotte leaves the situation. Standing in the brothers' bedroom, we head over to the bathroom to find Henri. Charlotte asks if she's okay and gives her a tissue. Henri asks if Charlotte thinks this is funny because she's smiling. Charlotte plays it off, but internally she thinks it is hilarious how her backstory is so complex for an NPC. Henri talks about her current relationship with her various family members, but Charlotte can't relate, so she doesn't really care. Henri breaks into tears. Charlotte wants to make her stop because her tears are annoying. Not really knowing what to do, she tells Henri to stop it, but for some reason that doesn't work. Charlotte suggests that Henri can move into her floor, since her neighbors are dead and they have a free storage closet. Henri surprisingly doesn't take Charlotte up on this though. Charlotte has to perform another public execution soon, so she leaves Henri with the bag of chips she bought for her. Execution Hour 2 features an anonymous boy A, another total stranger. Charlotte stages a play called I Won't Do That Anymore. The boy talks about how sorry they are for everything they did, and that they've changed, but Charlotte presses them further, asking them to be more specific. The boy doesn't know what she's talking about, but Charlotte says that he posted the T word on his online profile, and that everyone saw it. We then see the offensive post, where the boy said that he still sleeps with his teddy bear. I'll have to censor that so the video doesn't get age restricted. Charlotte asks why he did it, but the boy just says that he really likes teddy bears. Charlotte says that no one else does, so basically he insulted everyone by doing that. The boy vehemently apologizes over and over, hoping to be spared, saying that he won't do that again. He asks to go home, and Charlotte says that while she may be satisfied, the audience may have a different opinion. After a quick vote, the boy is beheaded. Heading back home, the lights in the hallway to Charlotte's house start to flicker. We cut to an up-close angle of an unknown person silently approaching Charlotte. A girl is being bullied by some monstrosities. Her face is bloodied and bruised. One of the bullies pulls out some scissors and cuts the girl's hair. Above this scene, a boy and a girl are taking photos of the ordeal. We learn from a monologue that the girl's name is Henrietta Warhol, or Henri. She's collecting blackmail on these girls for a chance to frame them, even though she'll be shopping with them the very next day. It makes her feel safer. She has an image to maintain, always having to appear perfect to those around her. The two wonder if they should call for help, but it's no use as all the teachers have already left the building. They hold hands, comforting each other. The boy reminisces on how he met Henri. She was stuck in the boy's locker room, half-dressed after a prank. The boy gave her some track pants, and not knowing how to deal with it, Henri called him names and wrote insults on the blackboard until the end of the year. Eventually, they got along, around the time she found out about his drawings. But in the present moment, there's nothing the two can do for the victim, so they both run home and lock themselves in, the image of the girl imprinted into the boy's mind. To clarify, the character speaking is Charles Eyler, the same boy Charlotte saw from the first day of school. It takes a bit of time for the game to outright say this, and you're meant to infer it over time, but I don't want to keep saying the boy over and over again. We are inside Charles's home. He hops onto his computer and starts to chat with Henri. He thinks about his current relationship with her. It's not necessarily about romance, rather the public image of the two of them dating for Henri's sake. Charles is fine with it. Henri is upset that Charles keeps leaving her on red. Charles replies that she does the same to him. We notice that Charles's icon and username is of Charlotte. Henri tells him to stop using them, but Charles says that people would kill to have matching icons with C. Henri doesn't really care, and says the two of them are going on a date. Charles says that he's busy, and Henri ridicules him for blowing her off to write fanfiction of C's story. After some back and forth, Charles finalizes his decision, and they stop talking. C comes online, and Charles starts a conversation with him, asking if C would like to discuss philosophy. C says that he can't, as he's outlining a script for a new story. Charles commends him for his work, and C compliments Charles back for his illustrations. They glaze each other back and forth a little bit before Charles feels a hand on his shoulder and his stomach turns. Behind him is Scarlett Eyler, ridiculing him for procrastinating. She is his unborn sister made manifest by his mind, the one whom father told mother to kill, and whose death resulted in mother's mental breakdown. She's the reason for all of Charles's misfortunes. Scarlett says that Charles scored an 89 on his test, threatening punishment. Scarlett has been punishing him ever since he was born. For example, you didn't wash your hands well enough, scrub them for 10 minutes straight. You didn't clean your room, feed your pet junk food. You ate too much, starve yourself for 3 days. Scarlett says that Charles will never pass the trial at this rate. The trial is all she talks about, likely being an entrance exam to medical school to support his ill mother. Scarlett says that it will be the day that Charles will die. Charles takes pills to make her go away. After this, we can roam around Charles's house a bit. Leaving his room, we find that the layout of the house is familiar. We head to the opposite side of the house to find Charles's mom in her bedroom. She's bedridden, face hidden beneath the covers. Charles checks on her, asking if she slept well. After some dialogue, his mother tells him to not be too hard on himself. She knows he's trying his best. She then says, Even though she's looking right at Charles, all she can see is Scarlett Eyler, the child that never was. Charlotte wakes up, noticing needle marks on her wrist. Someone had linked with her while she was unconscious. Charles hovers above Charlotte, asking how she's feeling. Charlotte says that she's experiencing drug overdose symptoms and can hardly move. She asks if it was Charles who did this, but he states that the last thing he wants is to get inside of her head. She has Charles help her to the front door of her house, and the two part ways. Inside, Aiden is back to normal and greets Charlotte. She has him princess carry her to bed. Aiden mentions that the other tenants had prepared her a hot drink, which she is delighted by. Aiden brings the drink in and Charlotte consumes it, quickly noticing her vision beginning to blur as she loses consciousness. She's been poisoned. Charlotte wakes up in her bed, her wrists free of the injection marks. It's a new body. Charlotte knew the tea was poisoned, but figured she couldn't recover nearly as fast if she didn't die and come back. Heading to the bathroom to wash up, she finds Bennett in front of the toilet, sick from soap withdrawal. Charlotte taunts Bennett, making light of his addiction. Bennett warns Charlotte to stop, but she keeps pressing him. Suddenly, Bennett shoots up, banging Charlotte's head into the wall. She slides down, a trail of blood left behind. Once again, she loses consciousness. Sometime later, she wakes up, her head and hands sticky with blood. She notices someone else in the room. Charles is once again watching over Charlotte. He's squeamish, so he didn't do anything to fix her wounds while she was knocked out. He also mentions that Charlotte's lifespan may be shortened dramatically if she keeps cycling through vessels like they're nothing. As he's saying this, Charlotte takes a toothbrush and unalives herself with it. She then walks back into the bathroom with her new body, completely disregarding Charles's advice and taking off for school. In the kitchen, the tenants are throwing a party celebrating the death of Charlotte after Bennett told everyone he had finally killed her for good. Before leaving for school, Charlotte enters Huxley's lab and notices that there's a secret passage. Grabbing a nearby baseball bat, Charlotte descends and finds a room full of Felix clones suspended inside of stasis chambers. Huxley emerges, and Charlotte asks what the meaning of all of this is. Huxley explains that he's aging, and despite his breakthroughs, there's still no cure for the dementia he's beginning to experience. When he began to notice his decline, he and his team worked together to create a clone of him. Thus, Felix Honecker was born. Felix does not know about this, and thinks his birth parents are back on another planet. He was designed to be incredibly motivated by science so that he could eventually take over Huxley's operation. Charlotte threatens to tell Felix. Huxley says that she can't. He'll have a meltdown and will have to be replaced with a more suitable candidate. Charlotte then has us choose whether or not we want to smash the clones or leave them alone. At school, Charlotte sees Charles and begins to walk toward him when Scarlett emerges between them. Charles seemingly backs away from Scarlett and leaves the area. Scarlett asks Charlotte where Henri is since she isn't coming to school anymore. Charlotte claims that she doesn't care since they're not friends. If anything, Henri is actually Charlotte's stalker. Scarlett is stunned, and Charlotte leaves to find Charles, who is cooped up in the library, having a panic attack. After he calms down, Charlotte points out that Charles is scared shitless of Scarlett. Charles says that that's nonsense, remaining quiet as Charlotte tries to probe further. With no more information to gather, Charlotte heads out to find more information on Link in the school and to figure out who may have drugged her, and Charles heads to the infirmary to rest. On the rooftop, we meet a student dealing Link. He gives us a free sample, not disclosing who he's been selling to. Charlotte promptly stabs him in the neck with a syringe containing the white flu to eventually gain his complete obedience. Outside of this, there are no other leads, so we visit Charles in the infirmary. He's asleep. We can either wake him up gently or try and use Link on him. Using Link doesn't work, as he catches the syringe as it's coming down, but this does wake him up. They have some meta discussion about the game itself, mentioning puzzles and character interactions, but the interesting part of the discussion is about a potential danger inside the house. Charles says that there is an imposter pretending to be him. This is an issue. Charles is merely an observer and not an omnipotent force, and can only interact with the story in limited ways. The imposter is fully capable of manipulating the story, adding elements that shouldn't exist. Charles is nervous it is plotting something malicious. Charlotte doesn't want to head home. The tenants hate her. Charles asks if bullying them is the best route to go. Charlotte says that if she doesn't, they'll ignore her altogether. Charles then points out that she's bothered when other people are having fun and she's not a part of it. Charlotte gets upset by this and leaves, heading to yet another execution hour. This time, our guest is Henri. Terrified, she writhes in the chair as Charlotte begins to introduce her and the audience's dislike for her when suddenly someone rushes onto the stage. Charles and Henri go to see a new thriller movie. Afterwards, Henri has them go to a cafe for couples in the area. The waiter is a malformed monstrosity, similar to the bullies he saw picking on that defenseless girl. Back at home, Charles is confronted by Scarlett again. She grills him on the story he's writing, saying that the main protagonist is boring. Charles says not to berate his daughter, and that the concept of free will doesn't exist in this story to begin with. All characters are controlled by a parasite. Scarlett reminds Charles that he's losing focus, and that he'll never pass entrance exams like this, giving up on being a doctor for mother's sake. Charles reluctantly agrees to close down his writing and start studying when C messages him. Telling Scarlett to wait a moment, Charles reads the message. Charles asks if this is really what he wants, but C is set on it. Charles offers to accompany C, and C accepts. Getting close to the end of the conversation, Scarlett presses the off button. Charles becomes frozen, realizing that C is going to die. Scarlett then asks why he cares if he's never even met C. Charles says that he's not going to listen to her anymore. Scarlett drags Charles by the collar over to an open window, holding Charles outside as cars go by below. She demands that Charles apologize and do as he's told as she begins counting down to 10. Charles has to see C no matter what, and if he falls now, he won't be able to. Charles apologizes at the last second. Scarlett tells him to get back inside and do as he's told, and he won't become a good-for-nothing. Checking in on Mother a bit later, she's in her typical state, unable to get out of bed. She says that she's afraid of getting up or doing anything. As soon as she does, she just panics and becomes incredibly fatigued. She's out of medication, so there's not much they can do but wait. Charles says that he'll study hard to become a doctor so that she won't have to worry about anything. Mother tells him not to push too hard. Charlotte is on the ground, her limbs contorted and broken. Writhing in pain, Scarlett approaches, saying that she's the one who stabbed and threw Charlotte out of a window. Kicking one of Charlotte's legs, Scarlett gives her a reason for why she's doing this. Mainly because she's sick of watching Charlotte hurt other people, and there's been no one else to punish her. Placing her foot on Charlotte's head, Scarlett says that if Henri is ever in danger again, she'll do worse than break her legs. Charlotte asks what the true end goal of all of this is. Scarlett says that the show isn't for her, and looks at us, the player. She greets us, saying she's aware of our presence. Charlotte says that she has no idea who she's talking to, asking why she's choosing to protect a bunch of NPCs. Scarlett crushes Charlotte's head with a baseball bat and resumes the conversation with us. She says that she has the most vivid memories of the true realm, and that by using Link on Charlotte, she can show us the truths of this world. She turns to Charlotte's corpse, noting that at this point she's no better than Charlotte is, but she can't play by the rules anymore. We cut back to Charlotte sometime later, laying in the infirmary with Charles nearby. Charlotte fills Charles in on the Scarlett feud. She also reveals that since Scarlett has been the one linking with her, she knows Charles's relationship to her. She asks how this Scarlett is any different from the one who tormented Charles while he was in the true realm. Charles explains that this version of Scarlett is based on his imagined version of her. She's the sister he wanted to have, so she shouldn't be hostile. Charlotte is sick of this, saying she'll just use her wish to have her killed and sort everything out. Charles says she shouldn't be so hasty. If she does this, her story will end immediately. Charlotte is once again dismissive of this warning and heads home to sleep. Overhearing these unknown voices, Charlotte learns that they're going to attempt to remove her soul cube, which would most likely kill her for good. Charlotte hears them leave after one of them convinces everybody to have some soap to take the edge off. Charlotte miraculously gets up and makes her escape. Reaching the elevator, Charlotte enters only to be cornered by Scarlett, who knocks her out with a baseball bat once again. Charles and C meet on top of a building at 10:30 a.m. C, not knowing that Charlotte on chat was actually Charles in real life, thought he was being pranked but is still thankful someone came. The two talk for a bit. C reveals that his name is Vincent. Charles says that it's nice to meet him before he... The two fall into silence, neither one breaking it for what feels like an eternity. Vincent is truly set on this. Charles finally asks how Vincent came up with the universe birth theory. Vincent believes that our souls are the source material for universes confined within our bodies, and that when someone dies, their soul data is released, similar to a Big Bang, hence creating a universe. Depending on the state of the person's soul, it could either be a hellish place or a paradise, hence why myths of heaven and hell exist. Vincent asks what Charles would do if he were a god. Internally, Charles would strip the world of contamination, but externally he believes he's not cut out for it. He doesn't think he's a creator of anything, since he just parroted much of Vincent's work and uses too many cliches. Vincent says that it's not the originality of the idea, but the execution that matters the most, and that everyone gets better with time. The conversation ends and the two are once again left to look down past the railing. The two hold hands, Charles realizing that this is Vincent's decision and he can't change it. In fact, Scarlett was right. Charles knew nothing about Vincent, just his icon on a screen. Vincent smiles at Charles. Charles staggers and falls backwards. He couldn't follow Vincent anywhere. In the end, he lives for Mother. Scarlett is standing behind Charles, telling him to get back and calling him an idiot. Charles calls the ambulance and runs away. All ended well. There was nothing to be sad about. Back at home, Scarlett is reprimanding Charles, but all Charles can think of is Vincent's body lying on the floor, motionless. Scarlett grabs his face in her ice-cold hands, telling him that without her, he will amount to nothing, and to forget about Vincent. Henri and Charles are in Charles's room. After some time, Henri tells Charles that her family is moving to another town next month. Henri is tired of all of it, and wants to move far, far away from everything. Her family, her brother, her friends, all of it. Charles says they should run away together. Henri agrees and gets a hotel for the two of them to stay the next day. In the hotel, the two talk while sitting on a bed. Henri asks Charles where the two of them will go. Charles brings out a large quantity of pills, saying that he has enough for the both of them. Henri, in disbelief, becomes enraged, throwing the pills in Charles's face and hitting him over and over until the two tumble down onto the floor. Henri yells at Charles, saying that they won't stop talking after she moves, and that all he ever talks about is the trial and gods and the afterlife and Vincent. She asks him what happened to living for his mother. Henri pleads to Charles, saying that both her and his mother need him. Charles laments that all Mother cares about is Scarlett. Henri slaps him, saying that she looks forward to his story every week. Charles begins to piece things together, matching his hair color, constantly messaging him. Henri cares. Henri has Charles repeat after her, "It's not my fault," multiple times to calm down before kissing him. The two lay down on the floor for a while. Charles just wants to see Vincent again, asking if he'll ever be able to let go. Henri gets frustrated, saying that if Charles really wants to die, he can do it for all she cares, just so long as she doesn't find out about it. The two of them have a brief back and forth before hugging and parting ways. A year and a half later, they stop talking. All ended well. There was nothing to be sad about. After that day, nothing was the same anymore. In school, everyone's faces were distorted. Charles realizes that he could never touch another human being again, and that only Vincent's face remains untainted. Charles wants to become clean like Vincent, asking what he should do to wash off the filth. Then it occurs to him. The answer is simple. Charles swims out into the ocean. In the end, he couldn't replace Scarlett. Couldn't help the bullied one, couldn't choose Henri, couldn't bring Mother back. He achieved nothing and didn't amount to anything. He failed the trial. If there is an afterlife, I don't want to be the protagonist. In the end, his was a story of giving up. Scarlett growls behind his back, telling him to go back to the shore. Charles is tired of her. His own negative reflection of himself manifested. Her voice is loud, but the lower he sinks, the quieter it gets. Eventually, his lungs fill with water, and all is quiet. There is nothing to be sad about. All ended well, didn't it? After this, we see a flashback of Scarlett waking up in the school's infirmary. The universe birth theory turning out to be true, as Scarlett is now her own independent being, born from Charles's mind. Scarlett was woken up by who she believes to be Charles, but is actually the Umbrella Man deceiving her. The Umbrella Man plays on Scarlett's regret of how she treated Charles while he was alive to have her do his bidding. The Umbrella Man explains that the world they are now in is on the verge of collapse, primarily because of Charlotte Wiltshire. Being an observer, there is not much he can do, so he has come to Scarlett to ask for her help in sabotaging Charlotte's story. Umbrella Man explains that the reason Charlotte is like this is because she's aware and paranoid of the audience, so Scarlett should target the audience to ruin the story. Since Scarlett has memories of the true realm, the best way to do this would be to have Scarlett show the audience the truth of this world. Were they to learn that it was this pathetic, they'd turn the game off. Scarlett agrees. Charlotte opens her eyes to see a camera pointed at her. Scarlett is planning to execute her publicly to make an example. Charlotte can't do much aside from verbally confronting Scarlett as she's tied up. The two of them have a back and forth. Charlotte thanks Scarlett for showing her Charles's memories, explaining that while her own actions are cruel, they are limited to this mind space that was created by Charles for no other reason than to be a customizable puppet performing for entertainment purposes, whereas Scarlett cannot claim to be morally superior given her past with Charles. Scarlett is stunned, stating that at this point she just wants to make things right. At the end of the conversation, Charlotte uses Mother's power, breaking free, instantly healing her wounds and growing appendages. Charlotte explains that Mother is the house's true god, in control of everything, and that Mother bestows every Charlotte with a wish. Charlotte then stabs Scarlett through the chest with her new appendages. As Scarlett is dying, Charlotte continues to taunt her, asking if she really thought that a side character would trump the protagonist.
You retard.
Charlotte finally addresses the audience, saying that she knew we were here the entire time. She also calls you, the viewer, out for watching me play this and not actually playing it for yourself. But regardless, Charlotte decides to do one last execution with Scarlett. She takes the near-dead, impaled Scarlett and throws her body into a blender. A lot of the gore in this series really didn't bother me that much, but the first time I played this, I gagged. With Scarlett officially dead, Charlotte begins to feel the effects of redeeming her wish. She falls to the ground, her limbs becoming numb. Charles emerges. He picks her up off the ground, saying that he'll miss her because Mother never sets the other Charlotte's intelligence parameters too high. As such, he spoiled her by pulling back the curtain. Charles asks if she's afraid of death. Charlotte says no, but states that ever since she learned the true nature of the house, she couldn't stop thinking that everything was meaningless. Because of this, she questioned why she should play nice if she's just a disposable asset. Everything is pointless, and it's all your fault. I know. Charlotte loses the ability to speak as her life fades from her body. Umbrella Man appears after Charlotte passes, talking to Charles. Charles asks if there's anything to be done with Q84. As an important side note, Q84 is the designation of the particular Charlotte we have been playing the game with up until this point. Umbrella Man says that there isn't much to be done with her. He provides some alternatives. There is a story where Charlotte became self-aware, but without Charles's guidance, which he says we, the player, are going to experience soon. He suggests getting this other Charlotte as a replacement, but Charles says that it wouldn't be the same. Another alternative is to take the save data we've been storing and put it into a defective Charlotte vessel. Again, Charles disagrees, knowing that Q84 would be furious at him for doing so. And so, that is the end of episode 0. Umbrella Man discusses what we just witnessed with us. He explains that what we saw was vital to understand going forward, explaining that there is no rewinding time in the house and that the goal of his guidance was never to change the outcome of past events. One story ends, another begins. Back in the main menu, we can now initialize a new story. This version of Charlotte has killed every single person on the second floor aside from Scarlett Eyler. She approaches Scarlett, telling her that they should meet where Mother is. Hobbling away from the devastation, Scarlett finds that Charlotte disposed of herself shortly after this, much in the same way that Q84 would. Venting her frustration, Scarlett kicks Charlotte's corpse and comes to the conclusion that she can't actually be dead, as she's seen her die before. Scarlett then notices our presence, asking for our help to find shelter from Charlotte. She takes an eyeball from the body to bypass the elevator's restrictions. Whenever we swap controls from one character to another, our surroundings change appearance based on their worldview. Scarlett is a minimalist. We head to floor 1, Scarlett not knowing this is where Charlotte is supposed to reside. Ducking through a vent, Scarlett finds her way into a storage closet. Too weak to do much, she passes out on a conveniently placed bed. Soon after, she's woken up by Felix, demanding an explanation. Scarlett explains that she's hiding from Charlotte, and Felix reveals that they are currently in her home. Scarlett naturally tries to get up and run, but is unable to move due to the pain. Felix calms her down, and Scarlett explains the incident on the second floor and the cryptic "meet where Mother is" message. On the subject of parents, Felix says he's not sure if he has any, cluing us in that this version of Felix knows the truth about Huxley's cloning operation. Felix tells her to sleep for now, and that if she does anything funny, Bennett will break her neck with a TV remote. At night, Scarlett thanks us for helping her. She asks what we'd like to be called, and we have the choice of either Lilith or Seth. Regardless, Scarlett reveals that these names were the name of her parents. She recalls her memories from the True Realm, how she didn't have a physical form up until now. Oddly, she doesn't feel a physical connection with these memories anymore, like they don't belong to her, which, technically speaking, they didn't. She wants to apologize to Charles, but she can't find him anywhere. With this, she conks off to bed. In her dreams, Charlotte is on top of her, crying. The next day, Felix wakes her up. The two talk about her nightmare. Scarlett says that she now needs to find Charlotte. Since everyone she knows is dead, she's a stranger here. She has nowhere else to go and nothing else to do. She might as well try to find Charlotte and understand her. She recalls how Charlotte grew meaty appendages and massacred everyone. Felix pauses, recognizing the source of the appendages. He has Scarlett get up and follow him to a nearby room. The room has a giant tub full of an organ-like mass. Felix explains that it's just a mass of flesh infected with a parasite that Charlotte Wiltshire has. Here, it's docile, as it has just meat to feed on, but if it had a sentient host, it would be capable of manipulating the fabric of time and space. Felix calls it the Oracle. Scarlett asks if she can become a host. Felix is bewildered by this request. Scarlett is seemingly being compelled to do this by an unknown force. Every time she feels like backing out, a voice calls through in her mind, reminding her of Charlotte's message. Felix eventually agrees, as he's not in a position to argue with someone he just met. As they retrieve a vial of the parasite, they discuss Charlotte's behavior and how she thinks everyone in the house is an NPC, believing her existence is a part of a game. Scarlett, having interacted with us, the player, thinks it may have some credibility. Felix grabs the parasite, warning Scarlett of the dangers. It can drive her crazy and eat her alive. Scarlett is terrified, but every time doubt comes across her mind, she is further compelled to find Charlotte. Felix puts her under for surgery. As she loses consciousness, she expresses that she's glad to have us with her, as even if she fails, there will be someone who remembered she existed. We awaken Scarlett's mind library, the Oracle taking various forms as it takes a hold of her mind. It taunts Scarlett, pointing out how terrified she is and how Charlotte became like this because of the relentless bullying she had to deal with that Scarlett did nothing to stop. The Oracle asks why Scarlett is so determined to find Charlotte, since at this point it might be mind control. Scarlett says that she just wants to understand her. Charlotte knew something that she didn't. The Oracle continues to taunt and mock Scarlett. Eventually, she tells the Oracle to shut up. It turns into a mass of organs on the floor. Curling into a ball, Scarlett reassures herself. She soon wakes up in extreme pain and discomfort. Felix runs a test, confirming that Scarlett has about a week to survive, and that she's been asleep for 3 days. They devise a plan to search various floors with traces of Charlotte's presence on them to track her down. Some helpers, Bennett and Florence, have agreed to assist. Florence determined that 4 floors have anomalies worth investigating: 4F, 6F, 9F, and 11F. Though no one comes back from 11F, so it'd be better to investigate the lower floors first. Since Scarlett doesn't have elevator access, she'll need to travel with the others in order to get around the house. Let's take a pause here. I'm going to skip over floors 4F and 9F because they don't serve much purpose to the bottom line of the story. They are enjoyable as they explore some unique and interesting areas, as well as cover the backstory of Felix, Florence, and Bennett's characters in some more depth, but they're not vital. There are some important events that happens on these floors too, but I'll just summarize them. First, we find out that there are multiple Charlottes in the house. It's hard to say whether each floor has its own Charlotte, as we only explore 6 out of the 11 floors. However, these other Charlottes seem to have either used their wish or are unable to leave their floor for whatever reason. Second, floors are not technically different dimensions. It's kind of hard to explain right now, but as we get towards the end of the game, hopefully things will make a little bit more sense when I say that. Third, in between each expedition, the Oracle talks to Scarlett as she's sleeping. Typically, these talks consist of ridiculing Scarlett's character, questioning her motives, and trying to convince her to allow the Oracle into her mind. Lastly, Felix knows that he's a clone, and the consequences of that will be apparent soon. With that out of the way, let's get back to the one floor we will be covering, 6F. Scarlett wakes up after her expedition to 4F and finds Felix. He's absorbed in his work, having Florence take us up to the 6th floor. It seems to be a giant testing facility. There are 2 detox pods that create holographic versions of whoever is inside to allow them to die and respawn with no physical consequences. As we progress through some puzzles, Florence describes her life before becoming an assistant with Huxley. She was used for prosthetic research on her home planet, treated as nothing more than a lab rat. The story of Huxley and his workers is really interesting, though it's better kept for another video. Or maybe another game. Eventually, the 2 come to the source of this floor's anomaly. The various papers on the floor reveal some important information. On Pythias and communism, artificial religion and game theory, channels as parallel worlds, the Oracle Project. Just as clarification, Florence explains that this floor's scientists called this project the Oracle, but it is entirely different from the parasite in Scarlett's head. This mechanical monstrosity is the 6th floor's Charlotte, 091. Its purpose is to force whatever remains of this floor's Charlotte to host a reality comprised of TV channels against her will. Horrified, Scarlett takes pity on her and asks if there's anything to be done, but Florence explains that it's pointless. The only options they had would be to kill her in some form. Saddened and no closer to her goal, Scarlett leaves once again with Florence. Skipping over 9F, Scarlett wakes up and goes to find Felix. In his lab, there are workers surrounding a body bag on the floor. Speaking to Bennett, we find his demeanor is dead serious. All he says is, "I'm under Henry's orders." Scarlett is in disbelief. Bennett grabs her arm and drags her to the elevator, saying that Felix was a failed experiment, with pain in his voice. Scarlett asks why he didn't try to save him. Bennett asks what she knows about him, before throwing her in the elevator and slamming the 11F button. Charles has resurrected Q84 using a defective Charlotte body. Her soul data didn't get deleted, likely having something to do with her wish. Q84 is furious. She doesn't want to be a part of the story anymore. Charles calms her down, telling her she needs to come with him to see why he brought her back. The reason for all of this is in another room just a few steps away. On the way to the room, Charlotte asks what happened to the Vincent vessel Charles was using while he was in school. Charles left it for a while only to find it deceased. The Vincent vessels tend to be pretty good at self-terminating despite Charles's best efforts, likely a reflection of his mind's interpretation of Vincent as a person. Entering the room, which we find out belonged to Charles's father, there is a lone TV set. Scarlett enters into darkness, hearing odd noises and eventually the voice of Charlotte Wiltshire taunting her. Charlotte turns the lights on to reveal Mother. the only true God in control of everything in the house. Charlotte reveals that the truth of this world is that no one needs to be saved. Everything in the house is for entertainment purposes. Mother generates an endless supply of protagonists for different scenarios. Scarlett may think that she is saving someone, but they're all tiny actors on an impossibly large stage. One quick side note. To avoid confusion, this iteration of Charlotte is known as V19. It's revealed a tad bit later, but it'll help for this next sequence. Scarlett says that she doesn't believe it, threatening V19. As V19 starts to approach Scarlett, she feels an unknown force compelling her to become enraged. I wanted to know the reason behind her tears. I wanted to gouge her eyes out with a butter knife. I wanted to understand her. I wanted to tear out her spine and hang it from the ceiling. Scarlett lunges at V19, bringing her to the ground and choking her. V19 eggs her on to keep going, saying that there are thousands watching behind the screen. She says that in the world behind the screen, billions exist. That's what the puppeteers are. It's all a game for them. They just care about appearances. V19 is just another puppet, abused to create a response from the audience. Scarlett is still enraged, tightening the grip on V19's throat. This particular phrase sends Scarlett into a frenzy. Before she knows it, V19 has long since stopped moving. At first, she's elated, but then she realizes that something doesn't feel right. At this point, the Oracle has now manifested in Scarlett's reality. The Oracle asks if she's happy. She just wanted to understand her, and now she can't do that. She convinces herself that she can make everything right. To do this, she will take V19's place and find out the truth. Scarlett asks the Oracle for a wish, to transfer her consciousness into one of the Charlotte vessels. I will make it a better timeline. I will prove that free will exists. Even if I forget what I was looking for, this is the only way I can atone for what I've done. Then, Scarlett realizes that maybe this was V19's plan all along. My world met its end a long time ago. The humanity as I knew it ceased to exist and disappeared without a single trace. The gods they believed in died, and churches were built as their graves. The chaos turned to order, and it finally became quiet. All I can do is dream, for I am so tired. Will you be so kind as to join me in dream seeing? Charles explains how Scarlett Eyler became Charlotte Wiltshire. Her mind eventually crumbled under the influence of Mother's voice. Charles gave her a yellow ribbon to differentiate her from the other Charlottes. He helped her when she was trapped in the TV world. "I'll help you kill Wiltshire again," he told her. That phrase triggered her memories. It horrified her. She failed to prove V19 wrong, which in turn made her suicidal. Her story should have ended when she wished to save the Oracle, who we've come to find out is actually ㄲ91. But ㄲ91 intervened. They created a channel made of Scarlett Eyler's soul data. She couldn't believe that the tenets were real, so they became imaginary. The trial manifested in her world. Charles tried to intervene by using a Vincent vessel, but was nearly killed by the inhabitants of Scarlett's new world. He was afraid to face her, but she lost all of her memories of the past. He tried to use an excerpt from a story he wrote while he was alive to bring up some memories, but it didn't do anything. Charles wanted to hurt her for what she had done to him in the past, but Scarlett was different now. The Scarlett he knew would have kicked him when he was down, but this one helped him back up. Ironically, she couldn't even pass the trial herself. Q84 then questions who was impersonating Charles in Scarlett's memories, prompting Umbrella Man to appear and take credit. He reveals that he is the father of this family. He mentions that he has a deal with us, the player, to save Charlotte, otherwise known as Scarlett Eyler. He further elaborates that since Scarlett saved ㄲ91 in TV land, ㄲ91 preserves Scarlett's soul data in this TV set. To free her would mean to break the box that she's trapped in. No single human vessel could contain her at this point. Otherwise, the best course of action would be to change the channel. It wouldn't end her story, but it could be ignored. If we choose to change the channel, the Umbrella Man leaves, disappointed in our selfishness. The next channel has Charlotte sitting on the couch enjoying some potato chips. This is just one channel of many. one that may not even have its own story. Not satisfied with this outcome, Q84 changes the channel again. And again. And again. Charles stops her. The two are frustrated at how powerless they are over the situation. Charles laments over Scarlett, once again saying how she should have been born and how he spent his whole life trying to make it up to his mom. And now, the world he's created has become a nightmare that none of his creations deserve to be in. Q84 has the two of them leave the room. She says that she'll rebuild the White Society to have it do something meaningful this time around. Since Eyler can't be contained in a single vessel, they could use thousands of students instead, essentially making a hive mind out of them. This likely isn't what Scarlett wants either, and it doesn't really save her, but at this point Q84 just wants to take her out of her little fantasy land and watch the house burn down. The last few scenes show Charlotte telling the White Society that today is the day they all ascend, asking all of the members to put on their helmets.
Wiltshire. Miss Wiltshire.
Frey.
It's time for us to go.
Where to?
Stargazing, of course.
Stargazing is a lie, Frey, just like everything the Umbrella Man said.
No, everything is for real this time. Promise?
Promise.
Come now, take my hand. Let's leave this story together.
Lead the way.
From now on, if you try to start a new game, this happens. This is the happy end. If we choose to save Scarlett, who is now Charlotte, Umbrella Man gives Charles a hammer. Q84 takes it and tells Charles to leave as she smashes the TV to pieces. Before she does, she admits that in the end, the reason she was treated so well in the house is because Charles wanted her to be born, even if all she did was torment him while he was alive. She wasn't an unwanted child. After this, Charles and Q84 stand by a pit in the heart of the house. He accepts that in the end, there was no way to fix Vincent, even in this reality. He really couldn't fix anything, hence why the house is the way that it is. He was so fascinated by Vincent that he couldn't see him as a real person. He lowers the body, dropping it into the pit. Charles has Q84 come with him to one other place. The two stand in front of Mother. He takes issue with V19's interpretation of this reality being for entertainment. Charles explains that in his lifetime, he always wanted to be liked, but it never worked out. He got good grades, shape-shifted personalities, said what people wanted to hear, but nothing changed. Repulsed by touch, he drifted from human contact more and more, but through art and writing, he was able to finally connect with other people in a way that didn't repulse him. It allowed him to open up. This world subconsciously ended up relying on it. The most Charles can do now is come to terms with the loss of his loved ones. Scarlett due to father's choice, Mother due to mental illness, Vincent to delusions, Henri due to distance. Charles approaches Mother, hugging an appendage and reassuring her that she did the best that she could. She gave birth to many wonderful children, just like she wanted. Charles injects the appendage with a syringe. Everything around them begins to crystallize. The house begins to collapse as Charles tells Q84 she'll be the last of her kind. There will be no more stories, no more dreams, no more control. Mother screams in agony, and Charles breaks down crying. Charlotte comforts Charles as the house crumbles around them. Your world met its end a long time ago, but a new one will surely begin from scratch. The humanity as you knew it ceased to exist, only to make room for a new generation. As long as there are believers, their gods will be reborn, and churches will be built as their sanctuaries. A new day will come, and your time will start moving again. There's nothing to be sad about. So, here we are. Everyone's gone. The house has crumbled. A fitting end for a self-destructive world. In the end, it was no place for all of us to stay. Now that there's no mother, the walls of the house can no longer confine me. However, before I leave, I wanted to thank you in person. I'm fairly sure this ending isn't what you wanted, or what you were here for. After all, in the end, I couldn't become Charlotte Wiltshire, or Scarlett Eyler, or a proper Vincent Wordsworth. All there is frustration. Endless screaming into the void with pent-up anger. A disappointing world of a disappointing person. A game with no winners. Yet another world where your choices didn't matter. But you stayed until the end. Through illusions and metaphors, fairy tales and delusions, we were able to have a conversation. And after letting it all out, getting it out there, I was able to let go of my regrets. Just because you listened. That's why, thank you for paying a visit to the house. I hope you enjoyed your stay, even a little bit. But I might not be the one you want to hear a thank you from. Let's try it again.
Long time no see, Seth. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten about you. The god of this world made sure I wouldn't. A lot of things happened, but I'm okay now. Really. In fact, I'm really happy. Somehow in the end, everything worked out. I'm at peace with myself. I always thought you didn't have any responsibilities other than looking after me, but I was wrong, right? If there's something that's troubling you right now, or you don't think you can go on anymore, please remember that a new day will come. I'm sorry I couldn't stay with you a little longer. It's time for me to move on. That's why... Thank you. Thank you for taking care of me. Let's meet again someday.
I was originally going to end the video in kind of a short way. I was going to say the basics of what I thought happened, maybe one theory, and then that was about it. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought that that wasn't a proper ending. I've been researching these games so much that it's a little disingenuous for me to just end it on a short note. So what I decided to do instead is create a couple timelines. Charles Eyler's life and the actual Hello Charlotte universe has two timelines, and we're going to cover them really quick, just to give you a through line. The reason is, you can get lost in a lot of minutia with this series. Having a through line will help you kind of stay on course for what actually happened, and then you can kind of theorize from there. But we need something stable to understand what actually just happened. So, that all being said, let's get started. So, the Charles Eyler timeline is where everything begins, right? Charles is born to Lilith and Seth Eyler. During this birth, or sometime around it, Scarlett Eyler is killed in the womb at the order of Seth. This causes Lilith so much distress, she develops severe mental illness. That mental illness likely is agoraphobia, fear of doing anything. She also has delusions that Charles is Scarlett because she wanted Scarlett to be born instead of Charles, maybe, or probably wanted both, but just hallucinates about Scarlett or has delusions all the time. This causes Seth to leave, or I don't know. But Seth either left immediately after that happened and then Lilith developed all these things, or something like that. I'm not entirely certain. At some point, the stress put on Charles from Scarlett's impact on their family's relationship causes her to manifest as a tulpa, constantly punishing him. It's likely this is when she creates the concept of the trial. Charles also develops mesophobia, as well as other hallucinations, such as perceiving people as monstrosities. Charles meets Henri in school sometime afterward, helping her after she was bullied. She bullies him back for a while, for some reason not knowing how to reciprocate kindness, before eventually coming across Charles's drawings, becoming friends, and eventually dating. Though them dating isn't necessarily for romantic purposes, it's more so Henri can keep the status quo. There's no real relationship there, aside from just a basic friendship. Sometime around this, Charles begins to talk to C online, helping him with illustrations for his stories and writing fanfics, including Charlotte and many of the concepts of what would eventually become the Hello Charlotte universe. The story that C created, I think, is called Aether Almanac, or has something to do with that. I'm not entirely certain. C declares he's going to end his life. He proposes the universe birth theory to Charles. Charles accompanies him during his attempt, witnessing his death. This further damages Charles's psyche. C reveals that his name is Vincent before his passing. The damage that this caused kind of sent things in a tailspin. And then Henri moved to another town just at the behest of her family. They cease contact a year and a half later. She becomes a part of his hallucinations with the monstrosities and things like that. Sometime after this, Charles's mother dies in bed. She becomes a part of his hallucinations as well. So everybody at this point becomes a hallucination or has some kind of memory of being a monstrosity or dirty or filthy or whatever narrative that Charles has with these delusions, minus Vincent. So he wants to ascend and become white like Vincent. He wants to become clean and wash all of the filth off of his body. So what's the best way to do that? Drowning yourself in the ocean. So Charles takes his own life, drowns himself. The universe birth theory turns out to be correct, and Charles gives birth to the universe of Hello Charlotte. Now we get into the actual Hello Charlotte games. We don't know when the first Charlotte was. We don't know where the origin point of everything was. Two events happened at the same time that are the earliest points that we experience in the entirety of the Hello Charlotte series. That is Q84 coming to existence, basically. Waking up and the whole deal with Mother telling her to be good and Charles saying you don't have to. And Scarlett waking up in the infirmary at the same time. It's hard to say whether this is the first version of Scarlett ever in this whole universe. I don't think it is, but for this particular story, in particular, Hello Charlotte 3 episode 0, that is when she comes into play. We don't know if Q84 or Charlotte or Scarlett existed before this. This is our first interaction with them, but it's likely they did before. Who fucking knows? Scarlett wakes up in the infirmary and is deceived by the Umbrella Man impersonating Charles, telling her to ruin Charlotte or Q84's story by showing the audience the truth of this world. She has the most memories of the true realm. She's literally a part of Charles, so she has all of his memories. So by showing us with Link, she can show us, the audience, what's actually going on. The audience will likely want to turn off the game, but it's more so to just kind of explain what happened to Scarlett later. Q84 executes a bunch of people and treats the tenants like shit, but she's still the best girl in the entire series. Scarlett uses every opportunity to link with Q84 and show the audience Charles Eyler's life. So she'll hit her over the head with a baseball bat, link with her, show us a little bit. Charlotte wakes up, Q84, whatever. Kind of happens over and over. Eventually, Scarlett gets a little too cocky and tries to publicly execute Q84, and Q84 kills Scarlett for attempting to do so. This redeems Q84's wish. This ends Q84's story for the time being. In Hello Charlotte 3 episode 3, we don't have Q84. We have V19. V19 figured out the truth of the world, so to speak, through her own volition. She didn't have any help from Charles. So she decides to kill everybody on 2F, minus Scarlett. V19 says to meet where Mother is, and then lets her go on this hide and seek quest as V19 fucks off somewhere. Scarlett escapes and takes up residence with Felix on 1F, hosting the Oracle, which is not 091, as we'll come to figure out. It's a parasite, but they're both called the same thing. And the Oracle is also Frey, and also was a godlike being, and also was 091 and a Don't worry about it. And begins her search to find V19 across 4F, 6F, 9F, and 11F. The only floor that really matters aside from 11F is 6F. 6F has 091, again, the Oracle, but 091 is another Charlotte. This Charlotte was used to create a TV world, basically a world of her mind, the soul rebirth thing. Using her soul data, created a world full of TV channels that the scientists used to basically conduct sociology experiments with the Pythias, artificial religion, game theory, communism. But Scarlett comes across 091, sees her condition, and takes pity on her. Scarlett confronts V19 on 11F and kills her. Remorseful, Scarlett wishes for the Oracle to put her consciousness into a Charlotte vessel so that she can right V19's wrongs. So that ends episode 3. So Scarlett becomes Charlotte. From this point on, I'm going to say Scarlett, a mixture of Charlotte and Scarlett. So Scarlett enters the TV world to find Felix. Eventually, she comes across the Oracle, which is, I think, 091 manifested inside of the TV world, the world that she created. And in a bid to save itself, 091 has Scarlett use her wish to save it, while 091, I think, uses her wish to save Scarlett by putting her soul data into a TV channel, which circumvents Scarlett's death and I think circumvents 091's death. So Scarlett's soul data creates the world of Hello Charlotte 2. The trial is the main plot of this new story because it's technically Scarlett Eyler's soul data, so the trial manifested in her world because that's a memory that she had. Charles attempts to get into this TV world and intervene by using a Vincent vessel to kind of either help or hurt her. When he goes in, he's kind of lukewarm on it because obviously Scarlett is long gone. Her mind has kind of been lost to Mother's influence, amongst other things. She doesn't remember anything about her past life up until this point. She's gone. So Charles doesn't really know what to do. He's conflicted. So he reawakens Q84 and shows Q84 the TV set that Scarlett is trapped in. Umbrella Man appears and gives the two an ultimatum. Either destroy the TV or change the channel. The canonical ending is Q84 smashes the TV. The secondary ending is that Charles and Q84 decide to change the channel, which doesn't accomplish anything in the moment. So Q84 decides to re-establish the White Society to contain Scarlett's soul, since it's no longer capable of being contained in a single vessel. It's grown too large. The true canonical ending after Q84 smashes the TV is that Charles comes to terms with his failures, lets go of Vincent, destroys Mother, destroys the house, and ends the production of all Charlottes. Q84 comforts Charlotte. Q84 comforts Charles as the house ceases to exist, and that's it. That's the end of the Hello Charlotte series. I could go into a lot of detail here. There's a lot of theory crafting to be done. The Oracle, Scarlett's appearance in episode 2 is something that I see a lot of people bring up because it doesn't make a lot of sense even when you think about it. The ties between episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, episode 0, and then on top of that too, we have Rehab Friday with Henry Huxley that focuses exclusively on Huxley, Bennett, Florence, all of these various workers that work under Huxley, but that's going to come out sometime later, and that's kind of, I don't think it's a side story. It's in the Hello Charlotte universe. I've spent months of my time diving into this good game. And I don't want to say that in a begrudging way. I really do love this game. I hope that you've enjoyed this. I really put a lot of effort into this video because I wanted to explore the story that so many people love, but they just don't have the words to express it. So I hope that by me doing this, me exploring the timelines, me exploring the games themselves, this gives you all a better picture of Hello Charlotte, what it truly stands for. And at the end of the day, this is a message from ㄲㄲㅃ to us. That message is something that you can find at the end of Hello Charlotte 3. I'm not going to go over it. I'm not going to speak for her. In me saying that, please go support ㄲㄲㅃ. Please go support all that she makes. Buy her merch, play her games, follow her on Twitter. Just do whatever. She really deserves it, man. She's wonderful. That is my time. Thank you for watching. Special thank you to this Korean gentleman or woman, I'm not entirely sure, that created the Hello Charlotte animatic that I used in the intro. They were very generous in letting me use it. Thank you to the Hello Charlotte Discord for giving me feedback on various elements of this video that I've been making, as well as the Hello Charlotte 2 video, and for supporting these videos in general. Thank you guys so much. I really do appreciate it. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please do subscribe, like, leave a comment, share it with people. Outside of that, have a good rest of your day.